18 inches. That's how close the chairs are in his office. 18 inches between an analyst's knee and his CEO's knee. 5 days a week, door closed, blinds open. Close enough to smell the cedar on his skin. Close enough to see the vein on the inside of his forearm when he rolls his sleeves. Close enough that when their hands collide reaching for the same document, neither of them pulls back. And neither of them mentions it afterward. And neither of them stops thinking about it. Ever. The Boss Wants Me After Hours by Jace Wilder. A controlled, untouchable CEO. The one employee who won't look away. A locked office door, and rules that get broken before the ink is dry. 5 pepper, high heat. You have been warned. Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. The elevator smells like money. Not literally, though I wouldn't put it past Cross and Mercer to pump some bespoke blend of Italian leather and ambition through the ventilation system. It's subtler than that. It's in the silence. The polished steel walls. The way the floor numbers climb without a sound, like even the building knows better than to make noise above the 30th floor. I straighten my tie for the 4th time. It's a good tie, navy slim knot, bought specifically for this job because my old ties looked like something a substitute teacher would wear to a funeral. I need to stop touching it. Confident people don't fidget with their ties. Confident people ride elevators to the 40th floor of midtown high-rises like they've done it 1,000 times. I've done it 0 times. The doors open. The reception area of Cross and Mercer Capital is all glass and clean lines, a long marble desk, a woman behind it who looks like she was cast from a catalog for people who've never had a bad hair day, and beyond her, an open floor plan that stretches toward walls of windows with a view of Manhattan that could make a grown man weep. Analysts at sleek desks. Conference rooms like terrariums. And at the far end, a corner office with the blinds half drawn, glowing warm against the gray morning. Liam Carter, the receptionist says. Not a question, really. She already knows. She has a badge waiting. That's me. Jordan will be right out. Welcome to Cross and Mercer. She says it the way people say, have a nice flight when you're boarding a plane in a thunderstorm. Polite. Inevitable. Mildly ominous. I clip the badge to my jacket and try not to look like I'm memorizing every square foot of the place, which I absolutely am. 2 years at Harman Strauss taught me plenty: how to build financial models at 3 in the morning, how to survive on caffeine and spite, how to smile at managing directors who took credit for my work. What it didn't teach me was how to be in a room like this and feel like I belong. I'll figure that part out. Jordan Aguilar materializes like he was assembled from the building's aesthetic itself, trim, dark-eyed, dressed in a charcoal suit that fits better than anything I own. He extends a hand. His grip is warm and brief. Liam. Good to finally meet you in person. I'm Adrian's EA. He pauses and something flickers across his face, not quite amusement, not quite warning. He's in a meeting right now, so I'll get you set up. Your desk is on the main floor. Laptop's ready, credentials are in your inbox, and there's a welcome packet that nobody reads but legal insists we print. I'll read it, I say. Jordan gives me a look that says sure you will, and starts walking. I follow. He's efficient, I'll give him that. In under 10 minutes he's walked me through the floor layout, shown me the break room, better coffee machine than my entire apartment, the war room, currently commandeered for something called the Bellworth-Sato merger, which I know is the reason I'm here, and the supply closet. He delivers information in clean, orderly sentences, and he watches me the way someone does when they're deciding if you're worth the effort. Your direct report is Adrian Cross, Jordan says, stopping at a glass-walled conference room. Inside, I can see the shapes of people sitting around a long table. Which is unusual. Analysts typically report through a VP. But the Bellworth deal is his priority, and he specifically requested your assignment. Specifically, Jordan doesn't answer that. Instead, he tilts his chin toward the glass. He should be wrapping up. You can watch if you want. Might be useful. The way he says it makes me think useful is doing a lot of work. I step closer to the glass. And there he is. Adrian Cross is not what I expected. I'd done my research, obviously. You don't walk into a firm like this without Googling the CEO until your eyes bleed. I'd read the profiles. Columbia MBA. Founded the firm at 30. Forbes 40 under 40 inches years ago. There were photos, corporate headshots, charity gala candids, one grainy shot from some finance conference in Zurich. In all of them, he looked like a man who'd been carved from discipline. Sharp jaw. Dark hair. Eyes that gave absolutely nothing away. The photos didn't prepare me. He's standing at the head of the conference table, one hand resting flat on the surface, the other holding a pen he's not writing with. He's tall, taller than the photos suggested, 6'2" at least, and lean in a way that's less about vanity and more about efficiency, like his body decided a long time ago to stop carrying anything it didn't need. Dark suit, no tie. White shirt, top button undone. His hair is shorter than the photos, touched with gray at the temples in a way that shouldn't work as well as it does. But it's not his appearance that stops me. It's the way he's dismantling someone. Through the glass I can't hear the words, but I don't need to. A man across the table, ruddy face, expensive watch, the body language of someone who walked in confident, is shrinking in real time. Adrian isn't yelling. He isn't even gesturing. He's speaking quietly, and every sentence lands like a precisely placed incision. I watch the ruddy-faced man open his mouth, reconsider, close it. Adrian waits. Patient. Lethal. Then continues. The rest of the table is silent. Not the silence of boredom, the silence of people watching something they don't want to be on the receiving end of. My first thought, clear as glass, he's brilliant. My second thought, less welcome and significantly more dangerous, fuck. I know this feeling. I know it the way you know the first rumble of thunder, the part of your brain that says go inside while the rest of you stands there, face tilted up, waiting for the storm. I've been here before. Drawn to the precise, the commanding, the ones who occupy a room like they own the oxygen in it. It's a pattern. I'm aware of the pattern. Awareness has never once stopped me from walking straight into it. Adrian finishes whatever he's saying. The ruddy-faced man nods, beaten. Adrian straightens, taps the pen twice against the table, a period at the end of a sentence, and looks up. Directly at me. Through 40 feet of open floor plan and 2 panes of conference room glass, Adrian Cross looks at me, and the eye contact lasts exactly long enough to feel deliberate. His expression doesn't change. He doesn't nod or smile or acknowledge me in any readable way. He just registers. Like he's filing me in a system I don't have access to. Then he looks away, says something to the table, and the meeting is over. I realize I've stopped breathing. Useful, Jordan says from behind me. I clear my throat. Yeah. Useful. The formal introduction happens 30 minutes later, in Adrian's office. It's a corner space, floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls, the skyline behind him like a set piece designed by someone who understood the value of framing. His desk is clean, obsessively so. A laptop, a single stack of documents, a pen. No family photos. No personal touches. The room is all function and power, and he sits at the center of it like he grew there. Liam. He stands when Jordan shows me in. Comes around the desk. Extends his hand. Adrian Cross. Welcome. His handshake is firm and dry, and his hand is larger than mine, fingers wrapping around my palm with a certainty that borders on possessive. His eyes are darker in person, not brown exactly, but something deeper, almost black in the low light of the office. Up close, I can see the fine lines at the corners. Not from smiling. From focus. The handshake lasts 1 second too long. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I just want it to. Thank you, I say. I'm looking forward to the work. Sit. Not please sit or have a seat. Just sit. A single syllable that I obey before I've consciously decided to. And isn't that an interesting preview of coming attractions? He leans against the edge of his desk rather than returning to his chair. Arms crossed. Looking down at me. The height difference is negligible when we're both standing, but like this, him above, me below, his desk at his back like a throne, it feels intentional. You were at Harman Strauss, he says. Not a question. 2 years. Cross-border M&A, focused on APAC markets. I know. I read your file. His gaze moves over my face in a way that's clinical and thorough and shouldn't make heat prickle at the back of my neck. Your analysis on the Nakamura acquisition was part of why we recruited you. Clean work. Better than what most of our senior team produces. Thank you. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. His mouth doesn't quite curve, but something shifts in the set of it. Compliments imply, I'm trying to make you comfortable. I'm not. I'm telling you the standard I expect, and confirming you've met it before. Whether you continue to meet it here is a different question. A normal person would nod and say understood or I won't let you down, or some other thing that reassures the man in charge. I've never been great at normal. Then I guess you'll have to keep observing, I say. The silence that follows is a living thing. Adrian's eyes narrow, not in anger, not in irritation. In something sharper. Interest. The kind of interest that makes intelligent men do inadvisable things. The Bellworth-Sato merger, he says, after a pause that lasts long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. You'll be working it directly. It's the firm's largest active deal. $2.3 billion. Bellworth is our client. Sato is acquiring. The complexities are significant: cross-border regulatory, IP valuation, cultural integration. You'll report to me on this. Directly? Directly. The word hangs there. I know this is unusual. Jordan already told me, and I know Adrian knows I know. He's watching my reaction. Testing whether I'll question it, accept it, or read into it. I hold his gaze. When do I start? You started when you walked through the door. He pushes off the desk and returns to his chair. Opens his laptop. I've been dismissed, even though he hasn't said so. The meeting is over in the same way his conference room meeting ended, because Adrian Cross decided it was over, and the rest of the world arranges itself accordingly. I stand. Walk to the door. Liam. I turn. He hasn't looked up from his screen. The merger materials are in the war room. Familiarize yourself by end of day. I'll expect your preliminary assessment by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. Now he looks up. Just his eyes, the rest of his face still angled toward the laptop, and the effect is God. The effect is something. Is that a problem? No. Good. I leave his office and close the door behind me, and stand in the hallway for 3 full seconds reminding myself that I took this job for my career. My career. The Bellworth deal. The line on my resume. The trajectory. Not the way his hand felt around mine. Not the way he said directly, like it was a door he was holding open just enough for me to see what was on the other side. Not the way his eyes moved over my face, like he was memorizing a document he'd need to reference later. Career, Liam. Focus. Diana Reeves finds me in the war room at noon, surrounded by merger documents, like a man building a fort out of financial projections. You look like you're either going to solve the deal or be consumed by it, she says, leaning in the doorway. She's tall, black, with close-cropped hair and a face that communicates I've seen everything, and I'm not impressed without trying. VP of Operations. I know her name from the org chart. She clearly knows mine from somewhere more personal. Liam Carter, she says. Diana. I'm the person you come to when everything's on fire, and Adrian is too busy being Adrian to notice people need things like lunch breaks and reasonable deadlines. I like her immediately. Does he do that often? Not notice? Adrian doesn't not notice. He notices everything. He just doesn't always consider human limitations relevant. She comes in, pulls out a chair, sits across from me. Her posture is relaxed in a way that nobody else in this building seems to manage. How was the intro? Did he do the lean against the desk thing? I blink. Yes. Classic. He thinks it's casual. It's not casual. Nothing Adrian Cross does is casual. She studies me for a beat, something calculating behind the warmth. You survived though. That's good. The last analyst he worked with directly lasted 3 weeks before requesting a transfer. Encouraging. I'm not trying to scare you off. You're good. We wouldn't have recruited you if you weren't. I just want to give you the orientation the welcome packet won't. She leans back. Adrian is the best at what he does. Possibly the best I've ever seen. He's fair, he's rigorous, and if you earn his respect, he'll go to war for you. But he doesn't do small talk. He doesn't do pleasantries. He doesn't do warm. I wasn't expecting warm. Good. She pauses. Don't take it personally. Also, she catches my eye with an expression that's suddenly less casual and more pointed. Don't take it as a challenge. Something in the way she says it tells me she's not just being friendly. She's reading me the same way Jordan did, the same way Adrian did, and arriving at a conclusion I haven't admitted to myself yet. I'm here for the work, I say. Diana smiles. It's the kind of smile people give you when they believe what you said but not what you meant. Of course you are. Lunch is at 1. The good sandwiches go fast. Don't be late. She leaves. I sit in the war room surrounded by projections and valuations and regulatory filings, and I think about the way she said don't take it as a challenge, and I think about how that is precisely, exactly, inevitably what I'm going to do. The afternoon passes in a blur of numbers, and I love it. This is the part people don't understand about finance, or at least the part they never show in the movies. Before the deals and the drama and the corner offices, there are the models. Spreadsheets so dense they could double as modern art. Revenue projections, discount rates, synergy valuations. The Bellworth-Sato deal is a puzzle, and I've always been good at puzzles. Bellworth Industries makes precision manufacturing equipment, CNC machines, industrial robotics, stuff that sounds boring until you realize it's the backbone of half the supply chains in North America. Sato Group is a Japanese tech conglomerate that wants to vertically integrate Bellworth's hardware with their AI-driven automation platform. On paper, it's a perfect marriage. In practice, there are about 40 ways it could blow up: regulatory hurdles across 3 jurisdictions, IP valuation disagreements, cultural integration concerns that nobody wants to talk about out loud. Adrian is advising Bellworth. Which means Adrian is the one who needs to make this work. Which means I am the one who needs to make this work, because I'm the analyst sitting in the war room at 4 o'clock on a Monday with my sleeves rolled up and my third coffee going cold beside me, pulling apart Sato's financials like a mechanic under a hood. It's good work. Real work. The kind that makes me forget, for hours at a time, that my new boss has a jawline that could cut glass and a voice that lands somewhere between a boardroom and a bedroom. Almost forget. Not quite. Because at 4:47 p.m., Marcus Webb appears. I know Marcus from the org chart too, managing director, Adrian's second-in-command, the face that shows up in firm photos, standing slightly too close to center. He's good-looking in the way of men who know it and have optimized accordingly, salt and pepper hair, tanned, tailored. His smile arrives before the rest of his expression, which means it's practiced. The new recruit, he says, leaning into the war room like he's visiting an exhibit. Liam Wright. Marcus Webb. Welcome aboard. Thanks. Settling in okay. Adrian can be a lot on day one. He says it lightly, but there's a blade underneath, the a lot carrying a weight that's more about Adrian than about me. He was straightforward, I say. I appreciate that. Marcus's smile doesn't change, but his eyes recalculate. Straightforward. Sure. Well, if you need anything, my door's open. I know how it goes when Adrian gets focused, easy to feel like you're on an island. I'm fine on islands. That gets me a real look, a quick reassessing scan that Marcus tries to disguise as friendly interest. He nods, taps the doorframe twice and moves on. I watch him go, and file the interaction exactly where it belongs, under people who want something. I don't know what Marcus Webb wants yet. But I know the type. Every firm has one. The guy who smiles at you while measuring the distance between your shoulder blades. By 6 o'clock, the floor has thinned to the essential. Analysts packing up, VPs filtering toward the elevator bank, the ambient hum of the office dropping to a frequency that feels almost intimate. The light outside has gone amber, then pink, then the deep blue-gray of a city settling into its evening self. I should leave. I've done what Adrian asked, more than what he asked. My preliminary assessment is half-drafted, and it's solid. I could polish it in the morning, arrive early, drop it on his desk before the rest of the floor clocks in. That would be the smart play. The professional play. Instead, I open the next section of Sato's IP portfolio. Because I want to. Because the puzzle isn't finished. Because, if I'm being honest, and I might as well start being honest now since I'll apparently need the practice, because from my desk I have a direct line of sight through 30 feet of open floor to Adrian's glass-walled office. And Adrian is still there. He's taken his jacket off. It's draped over the back of his chair, a concession to the late hour that feels almost scandalous given how buttoned up he was this morning. His sleeves are rolled to his forearms, neat, precise folds, the kind that take deliberate effort, and his hands move between his laptop and a stack of documents with the focus of a man who has forgotten the rest of the world exists. I watch his forearms. The shift of tendon under skin. The way his fingers grip a pen like he's holding something in place. The flat planes of muscle that most men in his position have let go soft, but he hasn't, because Adrian Cross doesn't let things go. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't need to. The effect is the same, whether he's watching me or not. My chest is tight. My mouth is dry. There's a low, steady warmth pooling in my gut that has absolutely nothing to do with the Bellworth-Sato merger, and everything to do with the image of those forearms and what they'd feel like pressed against the small of my back. Stop. I close the IP file. Open my assessment draft. Start typing. The words come because the work is good and I'm good at the work, but underneath the paragraphs and the projections, there's a current running. The memory of his hand around mine, the weight of directly, the moment he looked at me through the conference room glass and something locked into place between us like a key finding a lock neither of us asked for. I know what this is. I've known since the elevator, if I'm honest. Since before that. Since I saw his photo on the company website and felt something stir that was more than professional curiosity. I told myself it was ambition. The desire to work for someone exceptional. The pull of a challenge. I'm a talented liar when I need to be. But I've never been good at lying to myself. I look up one more time. Adrian is reading something. His chin is tilted down, the light from his desk lamp carving his jaw into sharp relief. He turns a page. His tongue touches his lower lip, a fleeting unconscious gesture, and then he's still again, absorbed, untouchable, a man behind glass in every sense of the word. I save my draft. Close my laptop. Gather my things. In the elevator down, I lean against the steel wall and close my eyes and let out a breath I've been holding since 9 o'clock this morning. Career, Liam. Focus. Trajectory. The line on the resume. The elevator descends. The city opens up around me as I step onto the sidewalk, noise and light, and the beautiful indifference of Manhattan at dusk. I walk 3 blocks before I realize I'm smiling. Not the smart smile. Not the professional smile. The dangerous one. The one that means I've already decided something, even if I haven't said it out loud yet. Even if I won't say it for weeks. Even if the saying of it will rearrange the architecture of my entire carefully constructed life. Adrian Cross told me to have my assessment ready by tomorrow morning. I'll have it on his desk by 7. Not because he asked. Because I want to see his face when he realizes I'm not like the last one. I'm not going to transfer out. I'm not going to buckle under the pressure or be intimidated by the silence or crumble because he looked at me too long and I forgot how to breathe. I'm going to look right back. And God help us both when he figures that out. Chapter 2. I wake at 4:48. 12 minutes before the alarm. This is not unusual. My body has always preferred its own schedule to any clocks, a holdover from childhood, from years of sleeping in a house where the sounds that came after midnight were unpredictable enough that learning to wake before them became a survival skill. I don't think about that anymore. It's just data. Background noise from a life I've overwritten so thoroughly that the original code is nearly unreadable. Nearly. I kill the alarm before it fires, swing my legs off the bed and stand. The apartment is dark except for the city glow bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan in the hours between late and early, when even the skyline looks like it's catching its breath. I don't turn on the lights. I know the path. Bathroom. Sink. Mirror. The man in the mirror looks the way he always does, controlled. Composed. The gray at the temples is more pronounced than it was a year ago, but I've stopped caring about that. Vanity requires a kind of vulnerability I don't have the bandwidth for. Everything else is in order. Jaw set. Eyes clear. The face of a man who has not been surprised by anything in a very long time. Gym by 5. The building has a private facility in the basement, concrete floors, no mirrors, no music. I prefer it this way. 40 minutes. Compound lifts, a punishing core circuit, 10 minutes on the rower, until my lungs burn and my head empties and the only thing that exists is the rhythm of the pull. This is when I am most myself, stripped down, mechanical, in command of the only system that has never failed me. My body. Shower. Coffee, black, no negotiation. Suit, charcoal today, white shirt, no tie. I dress the way I run meetings, with deliberate economy. Every decision made in advance, so that no mental real estate is wasted on the trivial. I've been doing this for 8 years. The routine is load-bearing. Remove any piece, and the architecture shifts in ways I'm not interested in examining. Office by 6:50. The building is quiet at this hour. Security nods me through. The elevator delivers me to the 40th floor in silence, and I step out into the empty hum of Cross and Mercer before the rest of the world decides to show up. This is my time. The hour before the analysts arrive, before Jordan brings the schedule, before Marcus finds a reason to appear in my doorway with that expression he thinks is collaborative and is actually territorial. In this hour, the firm is mine the way it was when I built it, raw materials and possibility and no one else's fingerprints on the glass. I settle into my office. Open the laptop. Pull up the Bellworth-Sato file. And there, on top of the merger documents, centered on my keyboard like a calling card, is a printed report. 5 pages. Clean formatting. A cover sheet that reads, Preliminary Assessment, Bellworth-Sato Merger, L. Carter. I told him by tomorrow morning. It's 6:53. I pick it up. The paper is still warm from the printer, which means he was here recently. Within the last 30 minutes. Which means he came in before 6:30 on his second day of work to deliver an assignment I gave him 14 hours ago. I should find this irritating. Overageness is a form of performance, and I have limited patience for people who perform. I sit down and read the assessment. It is not a performance. The staff meeting begins at 9. Conference room B, the large one, glass walls, long table that seats 14. My team files in with the reliable choreography of people who know which chair is theirs. Marcus at my right, Diana across from him, the senior analysts in descending order of tenure, and then the juniors at the far end, where the coffee is weaker and the proximity to me is sufficiently diluted to allow normal breathing. Liam Carter sits second from the end. Not the last seat, he's not that deferential, but not the power position either. He's wearing a blue shirt today. The sleeves are rolled once at the cuff, slightly uneven, and there's a pen behind his ear that he's either forgotten about or left there deliberately because he knows it makes him look like someone who was too busy thinking to care about aesthetics. I notice this. I shouldn't notice this. I catalog it anyway, the way I catalog everything, filed under observation, which is a professional skill, and not under interest, which would be something else entirely. The meeting moves through standard updates. Revenue projections for Q3. Client pipeline. A staffing request from the London office that I table for later. Marcus presents a restructuring proposal for the Bellworth advisory team. His language is polished, his recommendations are reasonable, his subtext is give me more control of this deal. I let him finish. I say, we'll revisit after the SOTO meeting next month. It's a deferral that sounds like consideration, but is actually a wall. Marcus knows this. He nods, jaw tight, and writes something in his notebook that I suspect is not complimentary. Then I turn to the Bellworth SOTO update. Liam, I say, walk us through your preliminary assessment. The room shifts. Subtle, a few glances exchanged, a recrossing of legs. New analysts don't present to the full team on day 2. Everyone knows this. Liam knows this. I watch him register the weight of the moment and decide, in real time, not to buckle under it. He stands. Not because he has to, most people present from their seats. He stands because it puts him at eye level with the room, and because standing is a choice that communicates something I can't quite name but immediately respect. The core thesis of the merger is sound, he begins. His voice is even. No notes, he's working from the assessment he left on my desk, but he's not reading from it. Bellworth's manufacturing precision, combined with SOTO's automation platform, creates genuine synergy, not the word salad kind, the kind that shows up in margins within 18 months. A small laugh from Diana. Marcus doesn't laugh. But there's a structural issue with the IP valuation that I think we need to address before the SOTO meeting. The room goes quieter. Because the IP valuation is mine. I built the framework. It's the model the entire advisory strategy is anchored to, and this 27-year-old analyst, who has been at the firm for approximately 31 hours, is about to tell me it's wrong. The current model values Bellworth's IP portfolio at $1.4 billion, based on a DCF of licensing revenue, Liam says. That's defensible, but it's backward-looking. It assumes Bellworth's patents generate value through licensing alone. It doesn't account for what SOTO actually wants the IP for, which is integration into their automation stack. That's not a licensing play. That's a product play. And a product play changes the multiplier. He pauses. Looks directly at me. Not at the room. Not at Marcus, who is leaning forward with the barely suppressed glee of a man watching someone else take a bullet. At me. If we reframe the IP as a product integration asset rather than a licensing portfolio, the valuation shifts by approximately $200 million. And more importantly, it changes the negotiation posture. Bellworth isn't selling patents. They're selling the thing that makes SOTO's entire platform viable. That's a different conversation. Silence. I am aware of several things simultaneously. I am aware that he's right. Not entirely. There are nuances he's missing, regulatory implications he hasn't accounted for, a reason I built the model the way I did. But the core insight is right. I am aware that no one else on this team would have said it. Not because they couldn't see it, Diana probably could, but because challenging the CEO's valuation framework in a room full of colleagues requires either stupidity or a particular brand of confidence that doesn't care about the consequences. Liam Carter is not stupid. I am also aware that he is still looking at me, and that his jaw has that slight tightness I noticed yesterday, the muscle flexing almost imperceptibly along the hinge, a tell that means he knows exactly what he just did and is bracing for the response without showing it. And I am aware that I find this, his certainty, his stillness, the way he occupies the silence without rushing to fill it. I shut that thought down before it finishes forming. Interesting analysis, I say. My voice is level. I give him nothing, no praise, no irritation, no signal that he's landed a hit. We'll discuss the details after the meeting. Thank you, Liam. He sits. The meeting continues. I don't look at him again for 23 minutes. I know this because I am counting. I wait until the room empties. Liam. Stay. He pauses at the door, half turned, and the way the word stay lands between us is something I'm going to need to stop thinking about. It's a professional instruction. I've said it to dozens of people in this room. It has never before sounded like something pulled from a different register entirely. Close the door. He does. The glass walls remain transparent, the whole floor can see us, which is fine, which is the point, which is why this room is safe. Glass walls mean witnesses. Witnesses mean limits. Limits mean I remain the man I have spent 38 years constructing. He stands near the door. I remain at the head of the table. 12 feet between us. Appropriate. Professional. Your analysis, I begin. The core insight is valid. The product integration reframe has merit, and it's something we should model out. He doesn't react. No smile. No relief. Just attention, complete and undivided, and aimed at me with a focus that most people reserve for things they want. But you're missing the regulatory layer, I continue. CFI US review is triggered differently, depending on whether Bellworth's IP is classified as a licensing asset or an integrated product component. If we reframe the valuation, we also reframe the regulatory risk profile, and that changes the timeline by 3 to 6 months. There's a reason the model is structured the way it is. You anticipated the product play angle, he says. Not a question. Understanding arriving in real time. I anticipated it and set it aside because the regulatory cost outweighed the valuation gain. At least at this stage. At this stage, he repeats. Which means you're planning to introduce it later. After the initial terms are set, and the CFI US timeline is locked. He's fast. Faster than I expected, which is saying something because my expectations were already high. I hired him because his Nakamura work showed sharp instincts. What I'm seeing now is something beyond instinct. It's pattern recognition operating at a speed that makes most senior analysts look pedestrian. That's the strategy, I say. Which you now know, and which stays between us. Marcus doesn't have this piece yet, and he won't until I decide he does. Something shifts in Liam's expression. Not smugness, he's too smart for that. Satisfaction, maybe. The quiet kind that comes from being brought inside a perimeter you weren't sure you'd earned access to. Understood, he says. One more thing. I take a step toward him. One step. The distance between us decreases by roughly 2 feet, which shouldn't matter and does. In this firm, I value direct analysis. What you did in that meeting, challenging the model, presenting an alternative, that's what I hired you for. Don't stop doing it. I wasn't planning to. The words are delivered without defiance or deference. Just fact. And he holds my gaze while he says them, holds it the way most people in this building can't, with a steadiness that doesn't waver or flinch, as if looking directly at me is neither difficult nor dangerous but simply what he chooses to do. Most people look away when I hold a silence. It's involuntary, a mammalian response to sustained eye contact from someone who has authority over them. I've used it for years. In negotiations. In meetings. In the careful, invisible machinery of power that keeps this firm running the way I need it to run. I hold the silence, they look down, and the hierarchy reasserts itself without a word spoken. Liam doesn't look down. He doesn't look away. He stands there, in my conference room, in a blue shirt with unevenly rolled sleeves and a pen he's forgotten behind his ear, and he looks at me like he has all the time in the world. Like my silence is not pressure but invitation. Like he could stand here in this 12-foot gap, watching me watch him, until one of us says the thing that the air between us is already saying. My hand tightens on the back of the nearest chair. The leather creaks under my grip. I release it. That's all I say. Thank you, Adrian. First name. Not Mr. Cross, not Sir, Adrian. Said simply, without weight, as though it's the most natural thing. As though we are something other than what we are. He leaves. The door clicks shut. The glass walls of the conference room hold the empty room like a display case, and I stand at the head of a table meant for 14 people, and feel, for the first time in longer than I can remember, like the room is too small. The rest of the day is discipline. I work. I take calls. I review Marcus's restructuring proposal, and find 3 flaws that I document but don't share yet, because timing is a weapon, and Marcus doesn't need to know I've already disarmed him. I have lunch at my desk, salad, sparkling water, eaten without tasting because food is fuel and fuel is functional and function is the point. I do not think about Liam Carter. This is a lie, but it's a structured lie, the kind I can maintain because the thoughts aren't continuous. They're intrusions. Brief, unwelcome, arriving between tasks like signal interference. The way his hands rested on the table during the meeting, fingers loose, palms down, a posture that communicates openness which is either natural or calculated, and I'm not sure which possibility unsettles me more. The way his jaw tightened when I corrected the regulatory blind spot, not in embarrassment but in recalibration, his mind adjusting in real time, absorbing the information and integrating it without ego. The shape of his mouth when he said my name. Adrian. I recognize what I'm doing. I'm inventorying. Cataloging physical details with the same precision I bring to financial models, organizing data points into a file that has no professional justification. His hands. His jaw. His eyes, green I noticed, not the generic green of people who say their eyes are green, but the specific variegated green of something organic, something that changes depending on the light. I am not a man who notices the color of people's eyes. I close the inventory. File it. Lock it. Return to the Bellworth projections. At 3:15 Jordan appears in my doorway with coffee, black, no negotiation, the same way he's brought it every afternoon for 5 years. The Sato team confirmed the meeting for the 19th, he says, setting the cup on my desk. I've blocked the conference room and sent calendar invites to the advisory team. Good. Also, he pauses. Jordan's pauses are never accidental. He is a man of exacting verbal precision, and when he leaves space in a sentence, it's because he's choosing to let me see the gap. Liam was in by 6:30 this morning. Had the full assessment printed and on your desk before 7. I take a sip of coffee. I'm aware. Second day. Most new hires spend their first week figuring out the coffee machine. Is there a point? No point. Just an observation. Another pause. He's impressive. My response is too clipped too fast, and I know it even as the word leaves my mouth. He's adequate. Jordan looks at me. 5 years of working within arm's reach of someone teaches you things about them that no personnel file could capture, and Jordan Aguilar has a black belt in reading the things I don't say. His expression doesn't change. He doesn't raise an eyebrow or tilt his head or do any of the telegraphed reactions that most people use when they've noticed something they shouldn't have. He simply says, "Of course," and leaves. The coffee is excellent. It tastes like nothing. By 7, the floor is empty. I've been here for 12 hours, which is standard. 13 is common. 14 happens more often than my doctor would approve of, though I stopped seeing my doctor 18 months ago because he kept suggesting I delegate more and sleep longer, and neither of those things is going to happen. The cleaning crew has come and gone. The lights on the main floor have dimmed to their overnight setting, casting the rows of analyst desks in a blue-gray wash that makes them look like something from a photograph, still uninhabited, waiting. Through my glass walls I can see the whole floor and the city beyond it, and in this quiet, the firm feels less like a company and more like an extension of my nervous system. Every desk, every screen, every corridor a pathway I've mapped and maintained and controlled. Control. The word is load-bearing in my vocabulary, the way it's load-bearing in this building's architecture. Remove it, and everything above it comes down. I learned this early, not from business school, not from mentors, but from a childhood spent watching what happens when a man has no control over himself. When the bottle is in charge instead of the brain. When the fists are faster than the thinking. My father taught me, through consistent and reliable demonstration, exactly what kind of man I refuse to become. A man who is governed by his impulses. A man who wants something and takes it without calculating the cost. A man who lets the wanting win. I don't drink. I don't gamble. I don't bring people into my life who might introduce variables I can't predict. I have not been in a relationship in 6 years because relationships require surrender, and surrender requires trust, and trust requires. I close my laptop. Open it again. Navigate, with the precise keystrokes of a man who knows exactly what he's doing and exactly why he shouldn't be doing it, to the HR portal. Employee records. Search Carter Liam. The file opens. Professional sections only. I'm not looking at personal details. That would cross a line, and I am a man who respects lines, who built his entire life around the understanding that lines exist for a reason, and the people who cross them are the ones who end up destroyed. Education, NYU Stern School of Business. Top 3% of his class. Finance and Data Analytics double major. Dean's List every semester. Previous employment, Harmon Strauss 2 years. Cross-border M&A. Performance reviews uniformly exceptional. One note from a supervisor, strong analytical instincts. Occasionally resistant to conventional approaches. Benefits from autonomy. Resistant to conventional approaches. I read the line twice. 3 times. There's a version of this that's a red flag, a stubborn analyst who won't follow protocol. But that's not what I saw in the conference room today. What I saw was a man who follows protocol until protocol is wrong, and then follows his own judgment instead, and does it with enough conviction to make the room listen. References 3. All glowing. All using some variation of exceptional talent, and works best under strong leadership. Works best under strong leadership. I close the file. I stare at the darkened floor through my glass walls and think about absolutely nothing for approximately 90 seconds, which is the length of time it takes me to admit that I'm lying to myself. I open the file again. There's a photo attached to his onboarding documents. Standard badge photo, white background, professional lighting, the universal look of someone trying to appear composed while a stranger points a camera at them. In it, Liam is wearing a dark jacket and a tie I recognize from yesterday. His hair is combed but already showing signs of the structural rebellion I noticed this morning, and he's looking directly at the camera with an expression that looks exactly the way he looked at me in the conference room. Direct. Unhurried. Present. As if the camera, as if I, am the only thing in the frame worth looking at. I close the file. Close the laptop. Push back from my desk and stand and cross to the windows and look out at Manhattan and breathe. This is due diligence. Nothing more. He's a new hire on my most important deal, and reviewing his credentials is part of the process. Any responsible CEO would do the same. The fact that I've reviewed dozens of employee files in 8 years and never once gone back to look at the photo is irrelevant. The fact that I can still feel the exact pressure of his handshake, firm, dry, warm, lasting 1 second longer than standard, is a malfunction of short-term memory, not an indication of anything. I will manage this the way I manage everything, with structure, with discipline, with the ruthless application of reason over impulse. He is an employee. A talented one. Possibly the most naturally gifted analyst I've hired in the firm's history, which is a professional asset and nothing else. The wanting is a biological event. Electrical signals and neurochemistry, firing in patterns that my prefrontal cortex is more than capable of overriding. I've overridden worse. I've sat across from men who were more beautiful than Liam Carter and felt the pull and filed it and moved on without a single crack in the surface. Except, none of them looked at me the way he does. None of them stood in a room full of people who outranked them and challenged the framework I built without flinching, and then stood in a room alone with me afterward and said my name like it was something they'd already been carrying in their mouth. I press my forehead against the glass. It's cold. Good. I need cold. I need the temperature differential between the world inside my head, where Liam Carter's green eyes are looking at me with that steady, unhurried attention, and the world outside it, where I am Adrian Cross and Adrian Cross does not do this. Has never done this. Will not do this. I straighten. Collect my jacket. Turn off the desk lamp. Walk to the elevator, with the measured stride of a man who is in complete control of himself and every element of his environment. The elevator descends. 40 floors of silence. And somewhere in the middle of it, between 26 and 22, in the steel-walled quiet of a box dropping through the dark, I close my eyes and allow myself for exactly 3 seconds to think about his hands. Then I open my eyes. The doors open. I step into the lobby and onto the street and into the car and home, and by the time I'm standing in my kitchen pouring a glass of water I will not drink, the thought is filed. Sealed. Archived in a section of myself I have no intention of accessing. I go to bed. I do not sleep for a very long time. Chapter 3. 2 weeks in, and I've developed a problem. The problem is not the work. The work is exceptional, complex and demanding, and exactly the kind of thing that makes me forget to eat, until my stomach growls loud enough to startle the analyst sitting next to me. The Bellworth-Sato merger is a living organism, evolving daily as new data surfaces and regulatory landscapes shift, and Sato's board communicates through layers of protocol that require the interpretive precision of a diplomat and the patience of a man defusing a bomb. I love it. I'm built for it. Every morning I walk onto the 40th floor and feel the hum of the deal waiting for me, and every evening I leave with the particular satisfaction of someone who is very good at a very hard thing. The problem is not Marcus Webb, though Marcus is doing his best to qualify. He's been circling me like a shark who's not sure if I'm food or a fellow predator, friendly enough in public, probing enough in private, always watching. Twice this week he's appeared at my desk to ask about the Bellworth timeline, with questions that are too specific to be casual and too casual to be threatening. I handle him the way you handle any smart, dangerous person, with precision, brevity, and the understanding that everything I say is being recorded in a ledger I'll never see. The problem is not the hours, which are long but manageable. Not the commute, which is the same 40-minute subway ride every New Yorker endures with the grim solidarity of people who've collectively agreed that public transportation is a form of shared suffering. Not the learning curve, which is steep but climbable. The problem is the daily briefings. Adrian Cross briefs me every morning at 8:15. Sometimes again at 4. Occasionally a third time if something surfaces late in the day that requires immediate analysis, a new filing from Sato's legal team, a shift in Bellworth's board sentiment, a wrinkle in the CFIUS timeline that needs smoothing before it becomes a crease. These briefings take place in his office. Door closed. Blinds open. 2 chairs positioned on the same side of his desk, because at some point during the first week, Adrian moved the second chair from across the desk to beside his, so we could review documents together on the same screen, and neither of us acknowledged that the new arrangement put us close enough to share body heat. The briefings are professional. Ruthlessly, meticulously, aggressively professional. Adrian speaks in clipped, efficient sentences. He references documents by page number, from memory. He asks questions that test not just my analysis but my reasoning. Why did I reach that conclusion? What assumptions am I making? Where does the model break if this variable changes? It's intellectually demanding in a way that I find genuinely thrilling, which is either a testament to my love of the work or a symptom of a much more specific pathology that I'm choosing not to examine. Because here's the thing about sitting 18 inches from Adrian Cross in a closed office twice a day. You learn things. You learn that he smells like cedar and something darker underneath, sandalwood maybe, or just the clean, particular scent of a man who runs hot and keeps himself contained. You learn that his hands are always still when he's talking but restless when he's listening, the pen rotating between his fingers in slow, precise revolutions that are hypnotic in a way I'm embarrassed to admit. You learn that he has a vein on the inside of his left forearm that becomes visible when he rolls his sleeves, and that it traces a path from wrist to elbow that your eyes follow without permission, and that if you're not careful you'll spend an entire explanation of discounted cash flow modeling staring at the topography of a man's arm like it's the most interesting landscape you've ever seen. You learn that when he's genuinely impressed by something you've said, he doesn't praise you. He goes quiet. His eyes narrow, and there's a fractional tilt of his head, left, always left, and then he moves on to the next point as if nothing happened. But in that silence, in that tilt, there's something that feels more valuable than any compliment. Recognition. Not of the work, but of the mind behind it. You learn that twice in the last 2 weeks, his knee has touched yours under the desk, and both times the contact lasted exactly long enough to be deniable, and exactly long enough to make your entire nervous system recalibrate. So yes, I have a problem. The problem is 6'2" and smells like cedar and has a voice that sounds like whiskey poured over gravel, and the problem is sitting 18 inches away from me right now, explaining Sato's revised term sheet while I try to focus on the numbers instead of the way his throat moves when he swallows. Friday. Week 2. The office is thinning out by 6, the regular exodus of people who have lives and plans, and the reasonable expectation that their weekends should start before dark. Diana waves at me as she leaves, coat over her arm, and mouths have fun with an expression that might be sincere or might be sarcastic. With Diana, the line is so fine it might not exist. I should leave too. I've been here since 7:30. My preliminary report on Sato's revised terms is drafted and solid. There is no professional reason to stay. But Adrian is still in his office, and 20 minutes ago he said, "The Sato revisions need a second pass tonight. Are you available?" And I said yes, and now here I am walking toward his office with my laptop and a notepad, and the full knowledge that available is doing work in that sentence that has nothing to do with the Sato revisions. Or maybe it does. Maybe I'm projecting. Maybe Adrian Cross, a man who has been nothing but rigorously professional for 14 consecutive days, simply needs his analyst to review a term sheet, and I'm the one manufacturing subtext where none exists because I'm 27 and stupid and have been thinking about his forearms in the shower. I knock on the open door. "Close it behind you," he says without looking up. I close the door. The click of the latch sounds louder than it should in the emptying building, and the quality of the air changes the way it does every time this door shuts, thicker, closer, the ambient noise of the floor dropping away until it's just the hum of the HVAC and our breathing and the city 40 stories below. Adrian is at his desk. Jacket off, draped over his chair the way it always is after 6, one of the few concessions to comfort he allows himself. Sleeves rolled. Pen in his right hand. On the desk, the Sato revisions, 2 laptops, and a spread of takeout containers that I did not expect. "Sit," he says. Then, as an afterthought that doesn't sound like an afterthought at all, I ordered food. If you're going to work late, you should eat. I pull the chair into its usual position, 18 inches, same side of the desk, and look at the takeout. Thai. 2 sets of everything. He ordered for me without asking, which means he either guessed or he noticed what I ordered from the same place during a lunch delivery earlier this week. He noticed. The realization moves through me like a low current. Adrian Cross, who positions himself as a man who doesn't notice anything that isn't professionally relevant, noticed my lunch order and remembered it, and acted on it without comment. Thank you, I say. It's food, not a favor. He still hasn't looked at me. His eyes are on the term sheet, his pen marking annotations in handwriting so precise it looks typeset. Page 4. The IP licensing clause. Tell me what you see. And just like that, we're working. For the next 2 hours, the world contracts to this desk and this deal and this man. We work the way we've worked for 2 weeks, in concert, in counterpoint, the rhythm between us so natural, it would concern me if I let myself think about it. Adrian identifies the structural issues. I model the alternatives. He challenges my assumptions. I defend the ones worth defending, and surrender the ones that aren't. We eat without pausing the conversation, passing containers between us with the unconscious coordination of people who have shared space long enough to move around each other without collision. Except tonight is different. The office is empty. The building has exhaled its daily population and settled into its nighttime self, quieter, dimmer, the cleaning crew's distant vacuum providing a bass note to the silence. Through Adrian's glass walls, the floor stretches dark and unpopulated, and beyond it, Manhattan glitters with the self-important radiance of a city that never quite believes anyone could be looking at something else. The takeout is half finished. I'm leaning back in my chair, legs crossed, reviewing Adrian's annotations on the licensing clause. He's turned his chair to face me rather than the desk, a repositioning that happened naturally, without announcement, as the conversation shifted from review mode to discussion mode. The distance between us has contracted from 18 inches to something closer to 12. His right knee is approximately 4 inches from my left. I am aware of this distance, the way a compass is aware of north. The licensing structure Sato is proposing puts a cap on Bellworth's IP revenue at year 5, I say. That's a problem. It means Bellworth is essentially giving away future value to close the deal faster. Sato knows that, Adrian says. They're betting Bellworth's board is too focused on the upfront premium to notice the tail risk. Are they right? Adrian's mouth does something I've never seen it do before. It curves. Not a smile exactly, more like the architectural precursor to one, the foundation being laid for an expression that doesn't quite get built. They would be, if their advisor wasn't paying attention. Lucky Bellworth. Luck has nothing to do with it. The almost smile fades, but something in his eyes stays warmer than usual. We hold a look that lasts one beat past professional, and I feel it in my chest, the thickening, the tightening, the awareness of him as a physical presence in a way that the daytime briefings, with their built-in audience of an occupied floor, usually manage to dilute. There's no dilution tonight. There's just us. Sato's negotiation posture is more aggressive than I expected, Adrian continues, and the shift back to professional is seamless enough that I almost believe it. Almost. Their revised term sheet moves the timeline up by 6 weeks. That puts us under pressure for the CFIUS filing. Which is probably the point, I say. Compress the timeline, force Bellworth to accept terms they'd negotiate harder on with more runway. Yes. He studies me. What would you do about it? Let them think it's working. His eyebrows rise fractionally. Explain. Accept the compressed timeline publicly. Signal that Bellworth is willing to move fast. Then use the CFIUS filing as a natural braking mechanism. Slow the regulatory process just enough to claw back the negotiating room Sato thinks they've eliminated. By the time Sato realizes the timeline is expanding again, we've already renegotiated the licensing cap. Silence. Adrian is looking at me with the expression I've learned to read as his highest form of approval, absolute stillness. The head tilt left, always left. The narrowed eyes. The pause that stretches long enough for me to hear the HVAC and my own heartbeat and the distant, irrelevant life of the city below. That's good, he says quietly. Not interesting analysis. Not we'll discuss it. Just that's good. 2 words delivered in a voice that's dropped half a register, almost intimate, as if the observation was meant for the room and not for the record. I feel it everywhere. In my throat. In my gut. In the place behind my sternum that has been quietly, persistently aching since the first morning I walked into this office and watched him take apart a man's proposal with the precision of a surgeon. I have my moments, I say, and I'm aiming for light, but it comes out softer than intended, closer to honest than I planned. Adrian doesn't respond immediately. He's still looking at me with that steady, assessing gaze, and I can see the machinery working behind it, the calculation, the cataloging, the process by which Adrian Cross converts sensory input into categorized data. Except right now, in this moment, the process seems to be stalling. Like the data won't fit into the categories he's built for it. He reaches for the term sheet. I reach for it at the same time. Our hands collide. Not brush, collide. His fingers close over mine on the edge of the paper, and the contact is full, his palm against the back of my hand, his knuckles pressing into the document, the sudden, undeniable reality of his skin against my skin. Warm. Dry. His fingers are longer than mine, and they curl over my hand with a grip that is not accidental and not brief and not, in any universe, professional. Neither of us moves. The moment stretches. 2 seconds. 3. Long enough for me to feel his pulse through the point of contact, or maybe that's mine, hammering hard enough to register in my fingertips. Long enough for the air between us to change density, to become something you could almost touch. Long enough for me to look up from our hands and find his eyes already on me. Dark. Intent. The composure is still there, the surface, the architecture, but underneath it something is moving. Something that looks like the moment before a controlled demolition, when the charges are set and the countdown has started and the only question is whether anyone has the authority to abort. He pulls his hand back. The withdrawal is slow, too slow for a correction, too deliberate for a reflex. His fingers drag across the back of my hand as they retreat, a trailing contact that sends a shiver up my arm so violent I have to lock my jaw to keep it from showing. Sorry, he says. His voice is controlled, but the pitch is wrong. Half a note off. Rougher at the edges. Don't be. The words leave my mouth before my brain approves them, and they land in the space between us like a match near kindling. Don't be. Not no worries, or it's fine, or any of the dozen deflections that would sand the moment down to something manageable. Don't be. Which means I noticed. I felt it. I'm not pretending I didn't. Adrian's jaw tightens. I watch the muscle flex along the hinge, his tell, though I wonder if he knows I've identified it, and his hand, the one that just touched mine, curls into a loose fist on his thigh. The silence between us is a living thing. It breathes. It takes up space. It occupies the 12 inches of air between his knee and mine with the density of a physical barrier, except it's not a barrier. It's an invitation. The silence is the sound of 2 people who know exactly what's happening and are choosing, for reasons of survival or sanity or sheer stubbornness, not to name it. It's late, Adrian says. His gaze breaks from mine, the first time I've seen him look away first, and moves to the window. The city stares back, indifferent. We should wrap up. Yeah, I say. We should. Neither of us moves for 5 more seconds. Then I reach for my laptop, and he reaches for his pen, and the machinery of professionalism clicks back into place with the precise, oiled efficiency of something that has been practiced so many times it can run on autopilot even when the operator is somewhere else entirely. I'm packing my bag when Marcus appears. I don't hear him approach. He moves quietly for a man his size, which I file under intentional rather than natural, and suddenly he's in Adrian's doorway, leaning against the frame with the studied casualness of someone who has rehearsed looking spontaneous. "Burning the midnight oil," he says. His eyes move from me to Adrian and back to me, and the scan is quick enough to seem careless and thorough enough to catch everything: the takeout containers, the two chairs angled toward each other, the proximity, the hour. "Sato revised their timeline," Adrian says. He doesn't look up. His voice is the flat, uninflected tone of a man addressing a minor interruption. "We needed to review the implications tonight." "We," Marcus repeats, and the emphasis is invisible but present, like a watermark held to the light. "Of course. Anything I should be looped in on?" "I'll send a summary Monday." Dismissed. Cleanly, efficiently, with the same economy Adrian uses to end meetings that have exceeded their usefulness. Marcus absorbs it with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, nods once and turns to me. "Liam, don't let him keep you here all night." The warning is packaged as warmth. The warmth is packaged as an exit line. The exit line is packaged as something else entirely, a flag planted in the conversation to mark that Marcus Webb was here at this hour and saw what he saw. "Good night, Marcus," I say. He leaves. His footsteps fade toward the elevator bank, and the silence that follows his departure is different from the silence before, colder, more deliberate, the air pressure adjusted by the presence and removal of a witness. Adrian's expression hasn't changed, but his pen has stopped moving. "Monday," he says. Not to me. To the room. To the decision he's making in real time about the fact that his managing director just found his CEO alone in his office at 9 o'clock on a Friday night with a junior analyst and the remains of a dinner for two. I don't say anything. There's nothing to say that wouldn't make it worse, and I'm not interested in making it worse. I'm interested in the pen that's stopped moving and the jaw that's tightened again, and the way Adrian's eyes have gone flat and professional in a way that's so complete, so instantaneous, that I can see the mechanism that produced it. A switch flipped, a wall erected, a man retreating into the fortress he built specifically for moments when the world gets too close. "Good night, Adrian," I say. He looks at me. Just his eyes, the rest of his face angled toward his laptop, and for 1 second, one fraction of a second that I will replay in my apartment tonight until I've worn it smooth, the flat professionalism cracks, and what's underneath is raw and frustrated and so hungry it makes my breath catch. Then it's gone. "Good night," he says. And I walk out of his office and across the dark floor and into the elevator, and the doors close, and I lean against the cold steel wall and press my fist against my mouth and exhale a word that is not appropriate for the workplace. Diana texts me Saturday morning, "Drinks Tuesday?" Just us. I'm buying. I know what this is. I know it the way you know a performance review is coming. The invitation is warm, but the agenda is pointed, and Diana Reeves doesn't buy drinks without a reason. Tuesday evening. A wine bar in the village that's quiet enough for conversation and dark enough for honesty. Diana is already there when I arrive, a glass of red in front of her, looking like a woman who has decided in advance exactly how this conversation will go and is simply waiting for the other participant to catch up. "You look tired," she says. "Charming." I'm not charming. I'm direct. She pushes a menu toward me. "Order something good. You'll need it." I order a bourbon, because wine bars make me feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not, and wait. Diana lets the silence build, a technique she definitely learned from Adrian, or maybe one they both arrived at independently, because it's the preferred communication tool of people who are smarter than everyone around them. "Marcus asked about you," she says. There it is. What about me? Your hours. How much time you're spending with Adrian. Whether that's, she pauses, choosing her words with the precision of someone who understands that language is a loaded weapon. Typical for someone at your level. Adrian assigned me directly to the Bellworth deal. The hours reflect the workload. I know that. You know that. Adrian knows that. She takes a sip of wine. Marcus knows that too. He's not asking because he's confused about the org chart. He's asking because he's building a file. The bourbon arrives. I take a drink. It burns, which is useful because it gives me something to focus on, besides the sudden cold awareness that the thing I've been treating as private, the tension, the proximity, the hand on the term sheet, is not as invisible as I'd assumed. A file on what? Anything he can use. Marcus has wanted Adrian's seat since the day he didn't get it. He's patient, he's smart, and he's very good at waiting for people to make mistakes. She sets her glass down and looks at me with an expression that's stripped of her usual humor. I like you, Liam. I respect Adrian. I've been at this firm for 8 years, and in that time, I've watched Adrian keep every single person in this building at exactly the same distance. Professional. Courteous. Untouchable. She leans forward. I have never seen him order dinner for someone during a late night. I have never seen him move his second chair to the same side of the desk. And I have never, not once in 8 years, seen him look at someone the way he looked at you in last Monday's briefing when you challenged the revenue projection. The bourbon turns to lead in my stomach. Not because she's wrong. Because she's right, and hearing it out loud, having someone else confirm the thing I've been cataloging and rationalizing and replaying in the dark of my apartment, makes it real in a way that private observation never does. There's nothing happening, I say. And it's true. Nothing has happened. A hand on a term sheet. A knee under a desk. A name said in a particular register. These are not events. They are the shadows of events. The shapes that form on the wall before the object casting them arrives. I believe you, Diana says. I'm not warning you about what's happening. I'm warning you about what will. She holds my gaze with the steady, unblinking certainty of a woman who has watched enough brilliant people walk into enough beautiful disasters to know the trajectory before the first step is taken. He's not the kind of man who bends, Liam. So you need to decide if you're okay being the thing that breaks. The bar noise fills the silence between us, glass clinking, murmured conversation, a song I don't recognize playing at a volume meant to suggest atmosphere without demanding attention. I turn the bourbon glass in my hand and watch the amber catch the light and think about breaking. About what it means to be the fracture point in someone else's architecture. About whether that's a warning or a confession. Nothing is happening, I say again. Diana nods. She changes the subject to Marcus's restructuring proposal, and we spend the rest of the evening talking about office politics with the deliberate lightness of people who have agreed, without saying so, to pretend the important part of the conversation is over. It's not over. We both know it's not over. When we part on the sidewalk, Diana squeezes my arm and says, "Be careful," and I say, "I will," and she smiles the same smile she gave me on my first day, the one that means she believes what I said but not what I meant. Friday. 5 o'clock. The floor is emptying. I'm finishing my final pass on the revised CFIUS timeline, which is genuinely good work and genuinely due and genuinely the reason I'm still at my desk and not the other reason, the one that lives in my peripheral vision in the form of a glass-walled corner office where Adrian Cross is standing at his window with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled and his back to the floor, looking out at a city that exists 40 stories below him. I save the file. Close my laptop. Reach for my bag. Liam! His voice carries across the floor with the clarity of something designed to reach exactly one person. I look up. Adrian is in his doorway. He's leaning against the frame, not the way Marcus leans, performative and territorial, but like a man whose body has made a decision his brain is still processing. The floor between us is almost empty. A handful of analysts at the far end, packing up. Jordan left 10 minutes ago. Diana is long gone. The evening light is doing things to Adrian's face that should be illegal in a professional setting, catching the angle of his jaw, the line of his throat, the dark intent of his eyes. The Sato financials need a second pass, he says. Can you stay? It's a legitimate request. The Sato financials genuinely need a second pass. The verb stay is professionally appropriate. The request in isolation is unremarkable. But he doesn't say stay the way he says other words. He says it lower. Slower. Like the word has to travel through something dense to reach the air, through resistance, through judgment, through the wall he built between what he wants and what he'll allow himself to want. The word arrives altered by the journey. It arrives sounding less like a professional request, and more like the first true thing he's said to me all day. Stay. Diana's voice echoes in my head. He's not the kind of man who bends. I look at him. At the sleeves and the forearms, and the vein I've been mapping for 2 weeks. At the jaw and the eyes and the mouth that almost smiled once, in this office over Thai food, and hasn't come close since. At the hand resting against the doorframe, the same hand that closed over mine on the term sheet and lingered and pulled away too slowly. I should say no. I should say I've got plans, or Monday's fine, or let's loop in the team next week. I should walk to the elevator and ride it down 40 floors and step onto a sidewalk and breathe air that doesn't smell like cedar and go home to my apartment where the most dangerous thing in the room is the leftover takeout developing its own ecosystem in the back of my fridge. I should do a lot of things. Yeah, I say. I can stay. Adrian nods. A single controlled movement. He steps back into his office, and the light from his desk lamp catches his shoulders and the back of his neck and the place where his collar meets his skin, and I watch him walk away from me and feel something click into place. Not decision, exactly. Not surrender. Something more like alignment. The sensation of a compass finding north after weeks of spinning, settling into an orientation that feels dangerous and natural and completely, irrevocably inevitable. I pick up my laptop. I follow him. And the door clicks shut behind us, and the floor empties, and the city turns on its lights, and we are alone in his office at the top of the world. And whatever happens next is something we are both choosing with our eyes open and our excuses used up, and our professional boundaries drawn in a line so thin it might as well be imaginary. Whatever happens next. God help us both. Chapter 4. I made a mistake. The mistake was the word stay. Not the word itself. I've said it 100 times to 100 people, in this office and others. Stay for the debrief. Stay and review the numbers. Stay because the work requires it, and I am a man who requires the work, and the work does not care about the hour, or the emptiness of the floor, or the particular way the evening light turns the glass walls from transparent to reflective, converting my office from a fishbowl into a mirror. The mistake was saying it to him. Because when I say stay to Liam Carter, the word doesn't behave. It leaves my mouth shaped like a professional instruction and arrives at his ears shaped like something else entirely, and the fact that he heard the something else, I saw it, the fractional dilation of his pupils, the way his lips parted 1 millimeter before he said yeah, means we are now operating in a space where language has become unreliable, and I am a man who has built his entire existence on the reliability of language. He's sitting in his chair. Same side of the desk. 18 inches. Laptop open, the Sato financials casting blue-white light across his face. The floor beyond my glass walls is empty, fully, unambiguously empty, the last analyst gone 20 minutes ago, the cleaning crew not due for another hour. The silence is different from daytime silence. Daytime silence is a pause between sounds. This silence is a substance. It fills the room the way water fills a vessel, finding every gap, pressing against every surface, making the space feel simultaneously vast and suffocating. I should have told him to review the financials at his desk. Should have emailed the files and gone home and put 40 floors and a river, and the entire width of the island between us. Instead, I am sitting 3 feet from him in a dim office at the top of an empty building, and the Sato financials are on the screen, but I am not looking at the Sato financials. I am looking at his hands. He types the way he thinks, in bursts. Quick, confident strikes followed by pauses where his fingers hover over the keys, suspended in the gap between one idea and the next. His hands are proportional, clean-knuckled, with a thin scar across the back of the right one that I haven't asked about, because asking would be personal, and personal is the border I am not crossing. His nails are short. His wrists are narrow enough that I could encircle one with my thumb and forefinger. I know this because I've measured it visually. More than once. From 18 inches away, during briefings that were about revenue projections and regulatory timelines and absolutely nothing else. Focus. The Sato projections assume a 15% efficiency gain from integration, Liam says, and his voice enters my awareness like a frequency change, the room recalibrating around the sound of him. That's aggressive. Their own R&D timeline suggests 12 to 18 months before the automation platform is fully operational with Bellworth's hardware. A 15% gain in year 1 is optimistic at best. Optimistic is generous, I say. It's aspirational. Sato's board is selling their shareholders a story, and the story needs a number that sounds like confidence. So we push back on the number. We don't push back. We reframe. I turn my chair toward him. A mistake within the mistake. The repositioning puts me at a slight angle, facing him rather than the screen, and now the work is behind me, and he is in front of me, and the spatial grammar of the arrangement says you are what I'm paying attention to. If we challenge the 15% directly, Sato's negotiators dig in. It becomes a line-item battle. Instead, we accept the aspiration and restructure the deal terms around a performance contingent earn-out. If the efficiency gains materialize, Bellworth benefits from the upside. If they don't, the contingency protects our client's position. Liam looks at me. He's stopped typing. His hands are resting on the keyboard still, and his head is tilted at an angle that mirrors mine, unconsciously, I think, the way people tilt toward things that interest them. That's elegant, he says. It's practical. It's both. A beat? Then quieter. You think like this all the time? 3 moves ahead, reframing the board before anyone realizes the game changed? It's not a game. Everything's a game. The question is whether you're playing it or it's playing you. He says it with a half-smile that's more challenge than humor, and the insubordination in it, the casual, confident way he takes my framework and tilts it just enough to make it his, lands in my chest like a fist. Not anger. Something closer to the opposite of anger. Something that makes my pulse pick up, and my hands tighten on the armrests of my chair, and my brain produce a single vivid, catastrophically inappropriate image of his mouth saying those words from much, much closer. I look away. The city. The window. 40 stories of empty air between me and the street. I focus on the geometry of the skyline. Buildings are reliable. Buildings are structural. Buildings do not say things like the question is whether you're playing it or it's playing you with a smile that makes the room smaller. Model the earn-out structure, I say. 3 scenarios. Conservative, moderate, aggressive. I want it by Monday. You'll have it tomorrow. I said Monday. And I said tomorrow. I look back at him. He's not smiling anymore, but the residue of it is there, in his eyes, in the set of his mouth, in the way he holds my gaze without the slightest indication that he finds sustained eye contact with his CEO to be anything other than perfectly comfortable. This is the thing about Liam Carter that I cannot file, cannot categorize, cannot fit into any of the boxes I've built for the people who work for me. He is not intimidated by me. Not performing lack of intimidation, not masking it with bravado, not compensating with false confidence. He is simply, fundamentally, constitutionally unintimidated. He sits in my office and looks at me the way I look at everyone else, directly, assessingly, with the quiet certainty of a man who considers himself an equal regardless of what the org chart says. It is infuriating. It is the most attractive thing I have ever encountered. I am in significant trouble. We work for another hour. The conversation stays professional, but the subtext builds like atmospheric pressure before a storm, invisible, measurable only in its effects. I catch myself leaning forward when he speaks and correct it. He catches himself watching my hands when I annotate documents and looks away. We are two people performing a very careful choreography of not touching, not acknowledging, not naming the thing that has turned the air in this office into something you could strike a match on. At 9:47, we hit a snag in the third scenario. The aggressive model breaks if Sato's R&D costs exceed projections by more than 20%, Liam says. He's frowning at his screen, and the expression does something to his face that I need to stop noticing. A crease between his brows, the slight push of his lower lip, the way his jaw tightens in that tell of his that means he's thinking hard and doesn't like what his thinking is producing. The earn-out threshold becomes unreachable. Bellworth gets stuck with a deal structure that promises upside they'll never see. Show me. He turns his laptop toward me. The angle is wrong. The screen catches the glare from my desk lamp, washing out the numbers. I lean forward. Still wrong. The obvious solution is to tell him to adjust the screen or move the lamp, or email me the file. These are the solutions of a man who respects the 18-inch border and the professional framework and the fundamental principle that I do not need to be closer to this person than I already am. I stand up. I walk around his chair. I position myself behind him, looking over his shoulder at the screen, and the new arrangement puts my chest approximately 6 inches from his back and my face approximately 10 inches from his, angled over his right shoulder, close enough to see the numbers clearly, and close enough to feel the warmth radiating off his body like a low-frequency signal. He goes still. Not tense still. The way a man goes still when something he's been waiting for arrives and he doesn't want to startle it. His fingers stop moving on the keyboard. His breathing changes, I can hear it, we're close enough for me to hear the catch in his inhale, the controlled release of his exhale. His head doesn't turn. He stares at the screen. But he is no longer seeing the numbers. I know this because I am no longer seeing the numbers. The R&D variable, I say. My voice sounds wrong in my own ears. Lower. Rougher. Like it's being filtered through something dense on its way out. You're modeling it as a fixed cost escalation. Try a stochastic approach. Monte Carlo the R&D variance across 1,000 iterations and see where the earn-out threshold lands. Monte Carlo, he repeats. His voice is steady but his neck is flushed. I can see it, the slow creep of color from his collar up the side of his throat, a vascular response he cannot fake and cannot suppress, and the sight of it does something to my self-control that I am going to need to address very seriously and very soon. Yes. That's a lot of iterations for a Friday night. You said you'd have it by tomorrow. I did say that. He turns his head. Just slightly. Just enough to bring his face into my peripheral vision, and now we are close enough that I can see the individual striations of green in his irises. Not one green but several, layered, fractal, a complexity I did not need to discover at this distance. Adrian? My name in his mouth. Again. Said the way he said it in the conference room 2 weeks ago, only closer now, close enough that I feel the breath that carries it warm against my jaw. I put my hand on his shoulder. The gesture is what? Professional. Directive. The kind of contact a mentor makes, a colleague, a boss who is indicating a point on a screen or steadying himself while leaning in to read small numbers. It is a hand on a shoulder. It happens 10,000 times a day in offices around the world. It is unremarkable. Except my hand doesn't land on the padded curve of his suit jacket, because he took his jacket off an hour ago, and what I feel under my palm is the thin cotton of his shirt, and under that, the solid warmth of muscle and bone, and Liam Carter's body, and my fingers curve over the slope of his shoulder with a grip that is not directive and not steadying, and not professional in any interpretation that would survive an HR review. He doesn't flinch, doesn't stiffen, doesn't pull away. He leans. A millimeter. Maybe 2. An inclination so slight that anyone watching would miss it, but I am not anyone, and I am not watching from a distance. I am touching him, and the shift of his weight toward my hand is as unmistakable as a spoken word. He leans into my grip, the way someone leans into warmth on a cold day. Involuntary. Instinctive. A body answering a question the mind hasn't agreed to ask. My thumb moves. Without permission, without premeditation, my thumb traces a single slow arc across the back of his shoulder, following the ridge of muscle from the base of his neck to the outer edge of the joint. The shirt is smooth. The body underneath is not. There are ridges, contours, the architecture of a man who runs or swims or does something that has built his frame into something lean and specific and warm under my hand. 3 seconds. We are frozen for 3 seconds. My hand on his shoulder, my thumb stilled at the end of its arc, his head half turned toward me, the screen forgotten, the financials forgotten, the earn-out threshold and the Soto deal and Cross and Mercer capital and every professional justification I have ever constructed for my behavior forgotten. His breathing has gone shallow. I can see his pulse in his throat, rapid, visible, a drumbeat under the skin that matches the hammering in my own chest. His lips are parted. Not much. Just enough to see that his mouth is slightly dry, that his tongue touches his lower lip in the same unconscious gesture I catalogued 2 weeks ago, and that the gesture, performed at 10 inches instead of 30 feet, is a fundamentally different experience. At 30 feet, it was a detail. At 10 inches, it is an invitation to a ruin I cannot afford. I remove my hand. The removal is controlled. Smooth. I step back, 1 step, 2, and the distance that opens between us is both a relief and a loss so acute it manifests as a physical sensation, a coldness where his warmth was, a silence where his breathing was. That's enough for tonight. My voice is wrong. I hear it and I know he hears it, the roughness, the gravel in it, the sound of a man whose vocal cords have been tightened by the effort of not saying what he actually wants to say. I clear my throat. It doesn't help. Liam doesn't move immediately. He stays in his chair, turned toward the space where I was standing, and looks at me with an expression that disassembles me in real time. Not coy. Not seductive. Not playing at anything. Just open. Present. Looking at me the way he always does, as if I am the only thing in the room worth seeing, but now the looking has context. Now the looking carries the memory of my hand on his shoulder, and his body leaning in, and 3 seconds of contact that contain more honesty than I have expressed in 6 years of celibate, disciplined, tightly controlled solitude. He stands. Slowly. Collecting his laptop, his notepad, his jacket from the back of the chair. Every movement deliberate, unhurried, and I realize with a shock of recognition that he's moving slowly on purpose. He's giving me time. Time to change my mind. Time to say wait, or actually, or any of the words that would reopen the door I've just forced shut. I don't say them. I stand at my window with my back to him and my hands in my pockets, and my jaw locked so tight I can feel it in my molars, and I let him gather his things and cross my office and reach the door. Good night, Adrian. Quiet. Not wounded. Not angry. Just present. The way he is always, maddeningly, devastatingly present. Good night. The door opens. Closes. His footsteps cross the floor. I track them without turning, each one a diminishing signal, the sound of distance being created between us. The elevator chimes. The doors open and shut. And then nothing. The floor is empty. The building is empty. The world, for all practical purposes, is empty, and I am standing at the window staring at my own reflection in the glass, and watching the composed, disciplined, controlled man I've spent 38 years building look back at me with an expression that I have never seen on my face before. Want. Not the abstracted, manageable kind. Not the low-level signal I've spent 2 weeks filing and suppressing and rationalizing into irrelevance. This is specific. This is structural. This is the kind of want that has weight and texture and a physical location in my body, my hands which still feel the warmth of his shoulder, my chest which is tight in a way that has nothing to do with my morning workout, my cock which has been half hard since I stood behind his chair and is now fully, unambiguously hard, pressing against my trousers with an insistence that my prefrontal cortex can no longer override. I press my forehead against the glass. It's cold. It's not enough. I need to leave this building. The apartment is dark when I arrive. I don't turn on the lights. I move through the familiar architecture of my own space, the concrete and glass and steel that I chose specifically because it asks nothing of me, reflects nothing back, contains nothing that could be mistaken for warmth or comfort or the presence of another person. Shower. I strip in the bathroom with the efficiency of a man who has done this 10,000 times and never once thought about it, except tonight I am thinking about it. About the act of undressing. About hands removing clothing. About whose hands? The water is hot. I stand under it with my palms flat against the tile, and my head bowed and my eyes closed, and I tell myself that what I am about to do is a mechanical process. A release valve. A biological function, no different from eating or sleeping, or any other system maintenance that a body requires to operate at peak efficiency. I wrap my hand around my cock, and the lie collapses on contact. Because it is not mechanical. It is not maintenance. It is Liam Carter's shoulder under my palm, and Liam Carter's neck flushing red, and Liam Carter's mouth parted and dry and close enough to taste. It is the 3 seconds of contact replayed in high resolution, the warmth, the lean, the way his body answered my hand like a question he'd already decided to say yes to. I stroke myself slowly. This is not how I usually do this, when I do this at all, which is rarely efficiently, with the clinical detachment of a man servicing a machine. Tonight, there is nothing clinical about it. Tonight my hand moves with the same deliberate pace I would use on someone else's body, on his body, and the fantasy builds itself without my permission, assembling from the inventory I've been keeping, his hands, his jaw, his eyes looking up at me with that steady, unflinching attention. I think about his mouth. God help me, I think about his mouth. The shape of it when he says my name. The slight dryness of his lips. The way his tongue touched the lower one, in that unconscious gesture that I've now witnessed from 30 feet and 10 inches and will apparently never stop cataloging. I imagine those lips parted around me, wet, stretched, his eyes open and looking up because Liam Carter would look up. He would look right at me because that is what he does. He looks at me like I'm the only thing in the room, and if he were on his knees with my cock in his mouth, he would still look at me that way. Steady. Unhurried. Present. My hand tightens. My hips roll forward. The water runs down my back, and steam fills the bathroom, and I am braced against the tile, jerking off in my shower at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, thinking about a 27-year-old employee whose shoulder I touched for 3 seconds, and the absurdity of it would be funny if it weren't so goddamn devastating. I think about his neck. The flush. The way color crept up his throat when I stood behind him, a visible record of his body's reaction to my proximity. I imagine putting my mouth there, not kissing, not yet, just breathing against the warm skin below his ear, feeling his pulse hammer against my lips, tasting the salt and heat of him while my hand moves on myself faster now, grip tighter, the pretense of control dissolving in the steam. I think about bending him over my desk. The image arrives fully formed and catastrophically detailed. Liam braced against the surface, shirt rucked up, the long line of his spine exposed, looking back over his shoulder with those green eyes and that half smile, and that goddamn challenge he carries in every expression. I think about my hands on his hips. About the sound he'd make, something low, something surprised, something that would crack open the silence of my office and fill it with a sound I would never be able to unhear. My forehead presses against the tile. My breath is ragged, unrecognizable, The breathing of a man who has not sounded like this in years because I have not let myself sound like this in years. The discipline. The control. The 38 years of architecture built specifically to prevent this exact scenario. A man alone in his shower, undone by the memory of a shoulder and a look and a name said in a particular way. Adrian. I come hard. The orgasm rips through me with a violence that is completely out of proportion to the act, my whole body tightening, my hand gripping the tile so hard my knuckles ache, the sound I make swallowed by the water and the steam, and the vast empty silence of an apartment that has never heard me lose control. I stand there, breathing. The water runs. My hand is still on myself, softening, the aftershocks moving through me like tremors after an earthquake. I watch the evidence of what I've done spiral down the drain and feel nothing I can name. Not shame. I am too practical for shame, and the body wants what it wants, and pretending otherwise is the kind of hypocrisy I've never had patience for. Not regret. Because the fantasy was good. It was so good. He would be so good. What I feel is something worse than shame and more dangerous than regret. What I feel is recognition. The understanding, quiet and final and completely non-negotiable, that this is not a biological event I can file and forget. This is not a malfunction. This is not signal interference. This is Liam Carter's hand reaching for the same document at the same time as mine, and the collision of our skin producing something that I cannot suppress, cannot reroute, cannot engineer out of my system with discipline or distance or the ruthless application of will. I turn off the water. Step out. Towel. Mirror. The man looking back at me is the same man who looked back this morning, same jaw, same eyes, same gray at the temples. But something behind the expression has shifted. Some foundational beam has taken weight it wasn't designed for, and the structure is still standing, but the load distribution has changed, and I am not sure, for the first time in a long time I am not sure, that the architecture will hold. I go to bed. I lie in the dark and stare at the ceiling and think about nothing. Then I think about his shoulder. Then I think about his mouth. Then I am hard again, and I am furious, and I wrap my hand around myself for the second time, and this time I don't pretend it's mechanical. This time I let it be what it is. Adrian Cross, CEO, 38 years old, alone in a bed that has never held another person for more than a few hours, jerking off to the thought of his junior analyst with the kind of desperate, consuming focus he used to reserve for financial models and 5-year plans. I come again. Quieter this time. Into the sheets. With his name in my mouth, bitten back at the last second, trapped behind my teeth like something that would change the world if I let it out. Afterward, I lie still. The city hums beyond the windows. The apartment holds its breath. Monday. On Monday, I will be the man I have always been. Controlled. Composed. Professional. I will sit 18 inches from Liam Carter and discuss the Bellworth-Sato merger and the earnout structure and the CFIUS timeline, and I will not touch his shoulder. I will not stand behind his chair. I will not look at his mouth or his hands or the flush that climbs his neck when the distance between us contracts to something personal. I will be the man I have always been. I will. I close my eyes, and the darkness is full of green. Chapter 5. Something happened on Friday. I know this the way you know weather has changed, not from a forecast or a measurement but from the pressure in the air, the quality of the light, the way your body responds to atmospheric conditions before your brain catches up. Something happened on Friday night in Adrian Cross's office, and whatever it was, it's rearranged the molecular structure of our professional relationship, and I know this because on Monday morning Adrian is different. Not different in a way anyone else would notice. To the rest of the floor, he is exactly what he always is, precise, economical, vaguely terrifying. He runs the morning meeting with his usual surgical efficiency. He fields a call from Bellworth's general counsel with the calm authority of a man who has never been uncertain about anything. He sends an email to the London office that Jordan later describes with quiet admiration as 4 sentences that ended a 6-week argument. But I notice, because the 8:15 briefing doesn't happen. At 8:15 I am at my desk, laptop open, the earn-out models I built over the weekend polished and ready. The models are good, 3 scenarios cleanly structured, the Monte Carlo simulation running across 1,000 iterations the way he asked. I finished them Saturday morning, and spent the rest of the weekend convincing myself that the reason I worked through a perfectly serviceable New York weekend was professional ambition, and not the lingering ghost of a hand on my shoulder. At 8:20 nothing. No summons. No intercom buzz from Jordan. No Adrian appearing in his doorway, with the flat, focused gaze that has become the opening movement of my daily routine. At 8:30, Jordan walks past my desk. Morning briefings are moving to a group format, he says, not stopping. Conference room B, 9 o'clock. Adrian's restructuring the daily cadence. He says it smoothly, like it's administrative. Like the CEO of Cross and Mercer Capital, regularly restructures his daily briefing schedule on a random Monday for no reason. Like the elimination of our private morning meetings, the ones conducted behind a closed door with 18 inches between our chairs and the rest of the floor on the other side of the glass, is a matter of operational efficiency rather than personal retreat. Jordan doesn't look at me when he says it. He doesn't need to. His deliberate non-looking says everything. I sit at my desk. The earn-out models glow on my screen. I bite the inside of my cheek and taste the faint copper of frustration and wait for 9 o'clock. The group briefing is professional. Impeccable. A masterclass in organizational communication delivered to an audience of 8, in which Adrian Cross addresses the Bellworth-Sato merger timeline, the upcoming Sato meeting, and the resource allocation for the next quarter without once looking at me directly. Not once. I sit at the conference table, same seat as always, second from the end, and watch a man who touched my shoulder on Friday night and whose thumb traced a line across my back that I can still feel like a brand, and I watch this man perform the absence of me with a commitment that borders on artistic. He addresses the team. He references my earn-out models by name. Liam's scenario analysis is solid, we'll integrate it into the revised deck, but delivers the reference to the room at large, his eyes tracking a neutral midpoint above the table where no one sits and no one's green eyes are waiting for him to stop pretending. Marcus, seated at Adrian's right, is attentive. Too attentive. He glances at me twice during the meeting with the look of a man who is correlating data points. The Friday night he walked in on, the Monday morning restructure, the CEO who has never once held a group briefing for merger updates deciding suddenly that group briefings are the way forward. Diana catches my eye across the table. Her expression is unreadable, in the way that Diana's expressions are always unreadable when she's actually reading everything. The meeting ends. I stand. Adrian is already leaving, laptop under his arm, a man moving with the decisive stride of someone who has places to be that are not here, near me, within range of whatever happened Friday night. I watch him go. Fine. Fine. If Adrian Cross wants to pretend Friday didn't happen, I have 2 options. Option 1, I match his energy. I retreat into professionalism with the same seamless discipline he's deploying, and we spend the rest of the Bellworth deal exchanging documents through intermediaries and conducting our working relationship in the anesthetized safety of group settings. And the thing that happened, the hand, the lean, the 3 seconds that rearranged my entire nervous system, becomes a footnote. An anomaly. A Friday night that we file under, didn't happen, and bury beneath the weight of a $2.3 billion merger. Option 2, I don't let him. I choose option 2. Not aggressively. I'm not stupid and I'm not reckless, and I have no interest in detonating my career because a man with beautiful forearms touched my shoulder for 3 seconds. What I am is patient, and what I understand, have always understood from the first moment I sat in his office and felt the charge between us, is that Adrian Cross is not retreating because he doesn't feel this. He's retreating because he does. And retreat, when it's motivated by want rather than indifference, is not actually retreat. It's a delay. So I adjust. Subtly. In the small, deniable ways that operate below the threshold of professional misconduct, but above the threshold of ignorability. Tuesday morning. I wear a shirt I've been saving, slate gray, fitted, the kind that does something specific to my shoulders that I am not above leveraging. I roll the sleeves once at the cuff, mirroring him, unconsciously or not, and leave the collar open one button lower than my usual. It's not inappropriate. It's not even particularly noticeable. But it changes the line of my neck, and when I walk into the group briefing and take my seat, I see Adrian's gaze drop to my throat for a quarter of a second before snapping to his laptop screen. A quarter of a second. That's all I need. Wednesday. The team is reviewing the revised deck for SOTO. I present my section, the earn-out analysis, which I've expanded with sensitivity tables and risk scenarios that are genuinely excellent work and also require me to stand at the front of the room, 3 feet from Adrian's chair, gesturing at the projected screen with my back occasionally turned to him. I feel his attention on me like heat from a lamp, steady, directional, impossible to ignore especially when he thinks I can't feel it. Afterward, I hand him a printed copy of the updated section. Our fingers don't touch. The absence of contact is deliberate, surgical, a negative space I've carved specifically because the void is louder than the touch would be. Adrian takes the document. Our eyes meet over the edge of the paper. I hold the look for 1 beat. 2. Then I nod, professional, brief, and return to my seat. His pen doesn't move for the rest of the meeting. Thursday. I stay late. Not for him, for the work, genuinely, the CFIUS filing prep requiring focus that the daytime floor doesn't allow. I'm at my desk at 7:30, the floor thinning around me, and I do not look at Adrian's office. I do not. I work with the focused discipline of a man who is absolutely not monitoring the glass-walled corner office in his peripheral vision, tracking the movement of a tall figure who has also stayed late, who is also at his desk, who is also not looking at me. At 7:47, I get up to refill my coffee. The break room is between my desk and Adrian's office, which means passing his door. I walk at a normal pace. I do not slow down. I do not look in. But the break room's glass wall faces his office, and as I stand at the machine waiting for my cup to fill, I can see him. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled. Standing at his window with one hand in his pocket and the other holding his phone to his ear, and his profile is carved against the city light in a way that makes my hand tighten on the counter. He turns. Sees me through the glass. Our eyes lock across 30 feet of dim, unpopulated office space, and the phone is still at his ear, and my coffee is overflowing into the drip tray, and neither of us looks away. 3 seconds. 4. 5. He turns back to the window. I clean up the coffee. I go back to my desk. Progress. Friday. The Bellworth team comes in for a strategy session, and Adrian is magnificent. There's no other word for it. I've spent 3 weeks watching this man operate, in meetings, in negotiations, in the quiet precision of his private analysis, and I've developed a professional vocabulary for what he does. Effective. Strategic. Commanding. These are accurate words. They are also insufficient, the way calling a thunderstorm weather is accurate and insufficient. The strategy session runs 3 hours. Bellworth's CEO, a silver-haired Texan named Ray Bellworth who built a manufacturing empire out of a garage in Houston, wants reassurance. The SOTO timeline compression has spooked his board. There are whispers about alternative buyers. The deal, which looked locked 2 months ago, has developed hairline fractures that could widen into breaks if someone doesn't hold it together. Adrian holds it together. He sits at the head of the conference table and takes apart every concern with the patient precision of a man disarming a bomb. He doesn't rush. He doesn't reassure with platitudes. He lays out the strategy, the timeline management, the earn-out reframe, the CFIUS navigation, in language that makes a billionaire Texan feel like he's being given a weapon instead of a plan. By hour 2, Bellworth is leaning forward instead of back. By hour 3, he's nodding along like a man who's just remembered why he hired Adrian Cross in the first place. I watch from 4 seats down, and what I feel is not merely attraction. It's something hungrier than that, something more specific. I want to take this man apart. Not his strategy, not his logic, him. I want to find the place where the control ends and the person begins. I want to know what sound he makes when the architecture comes down. I want to know what his face looks like when he stops commanding a room and starts losing command of himself. The want is so acute it's almost painful, a physical ache that settles behind my sternum and radiates outward into my throat, into my hands, into the place at the base of my spine where his thumb traced that line on Friday, and where my body is still, absurdly and persistently, waiting for him to do it again. The meeting ends. Bellworth shakes Adrian's hand and calls him a goddamn surgeon, and Adrian accepts the compliment with a minimal nod that somehow makes the compliment sound inadequate. The team files out. Marcus lingers. He always lingers, his departures calibrated to maximize the appearance of access, and eventually even he leaves. Adrian begins collecting documents from the table. I should leave. Everyone else has left. The conference room is empty, and the floor beyond it is half vacant, and there is no professional reason for me to remain in a glass-walled room with a man I've spent 5 days testing the defenses of. I don't leave. That was impressive, I say. Adrian looks up. For the first time in 5 days, he looks at me directly, not through me, not past me, not at the carefully selected neutral point above my head. At me. The force of it after 5 days of avoidance is like stepping into sunlight after a week underground. It's the job, he says. No. What everyone else in that room did was the job. What you did was, I stop. I'm standing 4 feet away, near the end of the table, and the distance feels both too far and dangerously close. Something else. His eyes narrow. The assessment look, the one that means he's parsing my words for subtext, running them through his internal classification system, trying to file the statement under professional admiration before it ends up somewhere more dangerous. Your earn-out analysis anchored the session, he says. Redirect. Deflection. Give the compliment back, maintain the distance, keep the conversation in a lane where shoulder touches don't exist. Bellworth's confidence turned on the contingency structure. That was your work. It was your strategy. I just modeled it. Don't undersell yourself. Don't change the subject. The words land in the empty conference room like a stone in still water. I hear them leave my mouth and I don't retract them. Don't soften them, don't add the professional laugh that would sand the edges down to something manageable. I let them sit between us, don't change the subject, and watch his jaw tighten in the tell I've been mapping for 3 weeks. Silence. The conference room. The glass walls. The city beginning its slow descent into evening, the light going amber and warm across the table and across Adrian's face and across the space between us, which is 4 feet and shrinking because one of us has taken a step, and I'm not entirely sure which one. Liam. His voice is different. The boardroom voice, the one that commanded a Texan billionaire for 3 hours, is gone. What's underneath is lower, rawer, the voice from Friday night when he said that's enough for tonight with vocal cords that had forgotten how to be professional. There's a file on the licensing clause revisions on my desk. I need your review before Monday. Redirect. Again. Retreat into work, into documents, into the structure that keeps him standing. Sure, I say. I'll grab it. We walk to his office. Side by side, not touching, through the thinning floor with its blue-gray evening light, and its emptying desks, and its ambient hum of a building transitioning from workday to after hours. His office door is open. I follow him in. He goes to his desk, and I follow, and the room contracts around us the way it always does when the door is open, but the floor is empty enough that it might as well be closed. He picks up the file, turns, and I am closer than he expected. I'm not sure how it happened, whether I stepped forward without deciding to, or whether the room's geometry simply compressed while I wasn't paying attention. But the result is that Adrian turns around with the file in his hand, and I am right there, less than 2 feet away, close enough to see the pulse in his throat, and the dark ring around his irises, and the single fine scar at the corner of his left eyebrow that I've never noticed before because I've never been this close to his face in full light. He freezes. The file is between us, in his hand, extended, occupying the space that our bodies would fill if the paper weren't there. His arm is straight, like a barrier. Like a last defense. I don't take the file. I look at him. The way I've been looking at him since the first morning in the conference room, direct, unhurried, without the flinch or the glance away that he expects, and that I have never once given him. I look at him and I let him see what's in my eyes, not challenge this time, not defiance, just the raw and unedited truth of what I feel when I'm standing this close to Adrian Cross. Want. Clear and total and unapologetic. Take the file, he says. His voice is barely audible. A whisper wearing the costume of an instruction. In a second. Liam. You've been avoiding me all week. The sentence sits in the air between us. Adrian's arm doesn't lower. His jaw is tight enough that I can see the muscle jumping under the skin. His eyes are dark, darker than usual, the pupils blown wide in a way that has nothing to do with the room's lighting, and everything to do with what his body is doing in response to my proximity. I have not been avoiding you, he says. I restructured the briefing schedule for operational efficiency. Adrian? His name. Said the way I always say it, plain, direct, without the cushion of a title or the distance of formality. Just his name, spoken from 20 inches away with every ounce of honesty I have in my body. Something breaks. Not visibly. Adrian Cross doesn't break visibly, not in an office with glass walls, not in a building that still has people in it, not in a world where control is the only god he worships. But I see it. A fracture behind his eyes, a shift in the architecture, a load-bearing wall taking weight it was not designed for and holding, but only just. He moves. Not toward me. Around me. He steps to the side, past the file still hanging in the air between us, and he's behind me now, between me and the desk, and I feel rather than see his hand close around the file he's still holding, and set it down on the desk surface behind me. The motion puts his arm past my hip, his chest close to my back, his body arranged behind mine in an echo of Friday night that is so precise it has to be unconscious, because Adrian Cross would never deliberately recreate the exact configuration that undid him. Except his chest touches my back. Just barely. The lightest contact, the cotton of his shirt pressing against the cotton of mine, no skin, nothing exposed, and yet the touch carries the weight of everything we haven't said and everything we haven't done, and every inch of distance he's maintained for 5 days while his body was screaming to close it. I don't move. I don't breathe. I stand absolutely still because I understand, with the bone-deep instinct of a man who has been waiting for exactly this, that any sudden movement will spook him. That he's on the edge of something, and the edge is narrow, and if I push he'll pull back, and if I pull he'll push back, and the only thing that will keep him here is stillness. Openness. The quiet, undemanding presence of a body that is saying, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Do what you need to do. His breath touches my neck. Below my ear. Right side. A warm exhalation that moves the fine hairs at my nape, and sends a shudder through me so intense I have to lock my knees to stay upright. He's not kissing me. He's not even touching me with his mouth. He is breathing on me, his lips a centimeter from my skin, hovering in the electromagnetic space between intent and action, and it is the most erotic thing that has ever happened to me. More than any kiss. More than any hand on my body. More than any of the competent, pleasant, ultimately forgettable encounters I've had with men who wanted me enough to touch me, but not enough to hesitate first. Adrian is hesitating. And the hesitation, the trembling, excruciating space between his mouth and my skin, is where everything lives. His lips graze me. Not a kiss. A drag. A slow, devastating pass of his mouth from the spot below my ear to the junction of my neck and shoulder, so light it could be accidental if accidental things made your entire body catch fire. I feel the shape of his lips on my skin, the lower one fuller than I expected, slightly dry, warm, and then the barest edge of his teeth, a scrape that's more suggestion than contact, and the sound I make is involuntary and completely indecent. A breath. Just a breath. But it comes out thick and shaking and low, and in the silence of the empty office it sounds like the beginning of something that doesn't have a professional conclusion. Adrian goes rigid behind me. My sound has hit him like a slap. I feel it in his body, the sudden tension, every muscle locking as if a switch has been flipped from want to consequence, and the awareness crashes back into him all at once. Where he is. What he's doing. What he was about to do. The glass walls. The building. The name on the door. He steps back. The distance opens between us like a wound. Go home, Liam. His voice is wrecked. There is no other word for it. The composure, the precision, the vocal control that commands boardrooms and closes billion-dollar deals, gone. What's left is gravel and air, and the sound of a man holding himself together with nothing but will. I turn around. He's standing 3 feet away, hands at his sides, fingers curled into loose fists. His chest is moving faster than normal. His jaw is a steel line. His eyes. God, his eyes. They're dark and desperate and furious, not at me, at himself, at the mouth that dragged across my neck and the hands that want to do more, and the body that is standing 3 feet from mine, vibrating with the effort of not closing the distance. And if I don't want to, I say it quietly, without aggression, without seduction, without any of the performative tools I could deploy. Just a question. An honest one. And if I don't want to go home? And if I want to stay here, in this office, in this silence, with the ghost of your mouth still burning on my neck? What then? Adrian's fists tighten. I watch his knuckles go white. Watch his throat work around a swallow that looks like it costs him something. Watch the war behind his eyes, control versus want, discipline versus need, the man he's built versus the man he's becoming. I'm not asking. Command. The last remaining weapon in his arsenal, the voice of authority, the CEO voice, the voice that makes people obey because it does not occur to them that obedience is optional. I hold his gaze for 3 more seconds. 1 for every second his hand was on my shoulder last Friday. 1 for every second his mouth was on my neck tonight. 1 for every second of the next thing that will happen between us, because it will happen, and we both know it, and the only question is when and where and how much of his architecture I'll be standing in the wreckage of when it does. Good night, Adrian. I take the file from his desk. My hand is steady. My heart is not. I walk out of his office and across the floor and into the elevator, and the door's close, and I lean against the wall and press my palm flat against my neck, the spot where his mouth was, the skin still warm, still electric, still holding the impression of his lips like a wax seal, and I close my eyes. He tasted me. Not a kiss. Something more dangerous than a kiss. A reconnaissance mission. An advance scout sent across enemy lines to assess the terrain before the full invasion. His mouth on my neck was a question asked in the language of skin and breath and the barest edge of teeth, and my body answered with a sound that told him everything, that the answer is yes, that the terrain is open, that the invasion will not be resisted. The elevator descends. 40 floors. I keep my hand on my neck the whole way down, holding the warmth of him against my skin, feeling my pulse hammer against my own palm. He told me to go home. I'm going home. But the thing about a man like Adrian Cross telling you to leave is that the telling is the confession. If he didn't care, he wouldn't need to send me away. If I weren't a threat to his control, my presence wouldn't need to be managed. Every dismissal, is a declaration. Every go home is an admission that home is the only place I'm safe, because here, in his office, in his proximity, in the orbit of his gravity, I am dangerous. Not to him, for him. Dangerous because I make him want things he has spent 38 years refusing to want, and the wanting is winning, and he can feel it, and it terrifies him. Good. I step onto the sidewalk. Manhattan at dusk. The noise, the light, the indifferent beauty of a city that does not care that I am standing on its pavement with a racing heart and a burning neck and an erection pressing against my slacks with an insistence that makes the subway ride home an exercise in creative positioning. I walk 3 blocks. I do not touch my neck again. I don't need to. The feeling is migrating, from skin to muscle to bone, sinking deeper, becoming structural. Something I'll carry. Something that will be there tomorrow at the group briefing, when Adrian doesn't look at me, and the day after, and every day until the not looking becomes unsustainable, and the distance collapses, and whatever is coming arrives with the inevitability of a tide that has already turned. He put his mouth on my neck. He put his mouth on my neck, and then told me to go home, and the sequence is so perfectly, devastatingly Adrian. The indulgence followed immediately by the discipline, the want followed immediately by the withdrawal, the confession followed immediately by the denial, that I could almost laugh if I weren't so turned on I can barely think. My apartment is dark when I get home. I don't turn on the lights. I lock the door, drop the file on the counter, walk to my bedroom, and fall onto the bed fully clothed. I lie there, staring at the ceiling. My hand finds its way to my belt before I've made a conscious decision, and I undo it with the efficiency of a man who knows exactly what he needs and has stopped pretending he needs anything else. I close my eyes, and I'm back in his office. His chest against my back. His breath on my neck. The drag of his mouth, lower lip, warm, dry, the edge of his teeth, and the sound I made and the way his entire body went rigid when he heard it. The way he wanted to keep going so badly, I could feel it radiating off him like a fever. I wrap my hand around myself, and I think about what would have happened if he hadn't stopped. If his hand had moved from the desk to my hip. If his fingers had curled over the bone the way they curled over my shoulder last Friday, tight, possessive, holding me in place. If his mouth had stayed on my neck, not grazing but biting, marking me, while his other hand moved around to the front of my body and found the evidence of what his proximity does to me. I think about his hand on my cock. Long fingers. Precise grip. The same meticulous, devastating attention he brings to everything, to financial models, to boardroom strategy, to the controlled demolition of other men's arguments, turned on my body, taking me apart with the same patient focus, learning what makes me gasp, what makes me arch, what makes me say his name the way he says stay, low and rough and full of something he can't take back. I stroke myself hard and fast, and without any of the clinical detachment I imagine Adrian would bring to it. I am not clinical. I am a man lying on his bed in a dark apartment with his hand in his pants, thinking about his boss's mouth and his boss's hands, and his boss's voice saying go home like it was the hardest sentence he'd ever constructed. I come with his name behind my teeth, bitten back, tasting like copper, tasting like Friday night coffee, and the faint trace of cedar that followed me from his office into the elevator and onto the street and into my bed. Afterward, I lie still, breathing. The ceiling is dark. The city murmurs beyond my window. I think about Monday. I think about what happens when a man who has spent his whole life in control meets a man who has no interest in being controlled. I think about his mouth on my neck, and his voice saying I'm not asking, and the way his fists clenched when I said and if I don't want to, and I know, with the quiet, certain knowledge of a man who has been watching and waiting and reading the language of Adrian Cross's body for 3 weeks, that we are past the point of retreat. He can restructure briefings. He can route communications through Jordan. He can avoid my eyes in meetings and address his comments to the neutral midpoint above my head. He can deploy every tool in his arsenal of distance and discipline and professional detachment. But he put his mouth on my neck, and his body leaned into mine, the way mine leaned into his hand. And whatever wall he builds between now and the next time we're alone will have a door in it, because he is the one who keeps building the doors, and I am the one who keeps walking through them, and sooner or later, sooner I think much sooner, he is going to stop locking them. I clean up, brush my teeth, get in bed properly. Sleep comes easier than it should for a man in my position. But then, I've always slept well when I know what I want.
Liam Carter is standing in an elevator, 40 floors down. His palm is pressed flat against his neck, the spot where Adrian's mouth was. The skin is still warm, still electric, still holding the impression of his lips like a wax seal. He keeps his hand there the whole way down. The Boss Wants Me, After Hours, by Jace Wilder. The full novel is available now, link in the description. And if you want the scene that was too hot for Amazon, the Sunday morning after the first dinner, that's linked too. Thanks for listening. See you next episode.